Take it away.
All right, well, hello all. My name is Sarah, and I am a production editor for an open publishing platform called PubPub. I'm coming to you from Owego, New York. I just want to briefly start by thanking the organizers for putting this together and letting me participate, even though I am personally not an OER expert by any means. And I also thank you all for sticking around for the last session of the days, and that I think that really proves that y'all's dedication to this topic. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you today about how we are empowering OER communities with open publishing. So kind of like as most of us experience, the amount of free resources online is fairly abundant, and it's one of the great powers of the internet, but the reusability and the community engagement around this content varies quite a lot for many reasons. And with regards to ensuring that the content is reusable and useful, it gets at many of the ways that we could start to think about sustainability. And in this OER context, the choices that folks are making about using the technology impacts how they and their students accesses educational content for their courses. And there are a lot of questions that need to be considered when creating a classroom, all the more so for online learning. And this is certainly not an exhaustive list, but some points that are worth considering are, is the educational resource available or accessible online and offline? And that gets to a concept of availability. For another question would be will it be there for next semester or in years to come, kind of speaking to the longevity of a platform that is hosting the OER. Can it be repurposed or reused year over year? It kind of gets to licensing. And then will students' work be made accessible as well? And that kind of gets to permissions. So one of many platforms that begin to answer some of these questions in light of accessibility and longevity and sustainability is PubPub. And this is an open source community-led platform. Anyone can create a PubPub community and start creating their space right away. And this includes the ability to make documents with rich multimedia, version control, collaboration, revisions, lots of stuff, inline annotations and discussion, as well as being able to set permissions and licensing. So CC BY or NC, ND, whatever you can dream up. And sort of by creating this end-to-end publishing platform and working with communities of practice, what we found is that empowering communities to define their own community engagement models and managing their workflows allows for knowledge sharing to align with their community building and their own, values and aims. So in practice, because this is a fairly general platform, the communities on PubPub can take a lot of different forms. So here's just a few examples that are shown on the screen. But all of them are open access, meaning that it's inherently free to access them and reuse with attribution. And in most cases, if not all cases, to free to publish, depending on, where they're coming from. So a lot of the folks that we see and work with are usually academic people. So we see a lot of books and journals and resources that come out of university presses and publishers and libraries. So for example, on this page, we see the Harvard Data Science Review. That's obviously out of Harvard. And then this Circ Ethical Computing example is out of MIT. But just in general, because each community has control over their workflows and processes, the platform really opens up to a lot of possibilities. For example, art exhibitions, which we see in the Contour collection, learning series, like this fermentology group, and classes and conferences and more. Again, all of these are totally free to access. And as just a brief overview of some of the digital classrooms and OERs on PubPub, you'll notice that there's quite a few of them that span a wide range of topics, from ocean studies to gender and history to language studies and LibGuides. So for the sake of this presentation, I will just demo a few of these. I think 3 of them what I have in the slides to give you a taste of what these are. So first off, we'll talk about domestic knowledge. and this is a classroom out of Wake Forest University in North Carolina. This was created as part of a course called Wives, Writers, and Witches, Women and Gender in Early Modern Europe. And this course focuses on transcribing and researching early modern recipe books. So I'm just going to do a little demo. Hopefully this works. So this class includes a few different components. It has recipe transcripts, recreations, and essay and reflections mainly. So for the recipe component, students worked with scanned manuscripts that were made available from the Wellcome Library, and that's another free resource. And then the transcription platform that they used was called From the Page, and this is a small family-based team that creates that platform. And then all of that was embedded into an iframe, which you can see on this page. And this is an example of the recipe called of how to make gingerbread. So then all of this is custom, or not all of this is custom. Part of this is custom, the IIIF embedded thing here, which stands for the International Image Interoperability Framework. But the Wellcome is a free resource, and then the iframe embedding is something that's built into the platform. And then below the image, or below the iframe of the scanned manuscript, is the student's transcription of how to make a gingerbread based on that older recipe. And then another component of this course was recreating that recipe. And this kind of helped students understand what it meant to add like a shilling's worth of anise seed or enough flour to make gingerbread. And in this case, you can see that the pub that I showed you before is connected to this one. So that kind of gets you like how different documents can be, connected on the platform. And then they created a video of the students making the gingerbread recipe. And the kind of cool part about this was that the history department provided the funds for the students to buy the ingredients. And as part of this reflection, they went on to, just like write more about what this recipe means in that historical context. And there's lots of references and citations in there as well. So the kind of related to this, the final part of this course was a research component. And this kind of like let students research other primary resources around recipes and gender and history to create original scholarship. So for example, around sugar boycotting or early modern grocery stores. And by publishing the students' work openly, this means that their work will be read and even used by other scholars all over the world. This is something that was really important to the professor that was teaching this course, but I'll just note that in other classrooms that are hosted on PubPub, some of the students' work, like it can remain private to protect students' privacy. But in this case, the classroom opted to publish the students' work so that they have like a feeling of contributing to the body of knowledge of research work. And then I guess the last thing I'll note about this project was that the work was supported by a grant from the National Endowment of the Humanities, and the library also, the library at Wake Forest also supports some of the work on PubPub. So another learning resource is a book called Academic Entrepreneurship that was collaboratively written and produced by the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, or CHOP, and the University of Pennsylvania. And then this book was created around teaching graduate students and postdoctoral fellows to translate science and technology into health innovations. Whoops. Skipping way ahead. Didn't mean to do that. But so CHOP originally just hosted their book on PubPub. So this is the homepage of their book. And as you can see, there's like, it features different sections and chapters. But once the project was complete, they also worked with the PubPub community to create some interactives for some chapters and an interactive course based on based on this book. So as you can see, this is the different sections of the book. And then when you click into one of them, it contains all the chapters that are, part of that section. And then within a section, there are different interactives that are part of the chapter. So in this case, they worked with, or the CHOP team paid for PubPub to work directly with the authors to create and co-create these resources. In other classrooms and OERs, your teachers are more than free to create interactives themselves and on their own time for their OER resources. But in this case, the CHOP team gave us the funds to be able to work collaboratively on this. So again, here's an example of a video summary of a chapter. But some other examples are, like this one is a applied quiz to see if the people reading the chapter really understand and can apply what is taught in the chapter to this quiz. So this one is showing if you can understand the FDA approval process. So given that you developed a drug, like what comes next? And then you can, click around and see how far you can get until anyway. But sort of like as a testament to the success of creating these chapter interactives, they further wanted to create a whole course around the book. So this is something that we actually just recently released, these independent learning modules. And so each module is centered around the different sections of the book. And then the courses were created using a platform called H5P. And this allows for many types of interactive content, including like quizzes and videos. So here's an example of like a checkpoint quiz. Let's see if you got it right. I did not, but just kind of shows you that you can make quizzes and like test students' learning like on this platform. And these slides are mainly aimed for UPenn students taking a course this fall, but the content is clearly available for everyone to reuse. And as you can see, also reuse as well. Come on, slide, go forward. Okay, there we go. So in the last example, in some cases, like the OER is about OER. I actually saw someone presented or someone showed this resource earlier in the day in their presentation. So it's kind of cool to see that this OER is being used and is known in this space. So this community is out of Iowa State, and it's all about promoting OERs in tenure and faculty development. So it helps people make the case for open education practices to be incorporated into tenure and promotion practices. And something that's really interesting about this community in particular is that it gives all these different handouts and supplementary materials that you can then go and create your own. Like it gives you this editable Canva template that you can, open up and change and modify to your own like university's needs. Why are my slides not advancing? Okay, there we go. So all these examples are, again, of PubPub communities. And I just want to mention that PubPub is a product of Knowledge Features, and remind everyone that it's, again, open and accessible to all and operates under a nonprofit sustainable business model. So Knowledge Features is this little nonprofit, and it is largely member supported. And what that means is that we collaborate with different members and identify and implement strategies that enable communities to be more effective in their work. But it also provides like value to the broader network as well by contributing publicly to available digital infrastructure. So that means someone so like a member that we have, like say at Wake Forest, will pay for a certain feature, but then that will become publicly available to everyone that uses a KF product like PubPub. And I don't say this to sound pitchy, but since it's true outside of like a PubPub knowledge features context, but sort of like, by choosing public digital infrastructure, it means that you're casting a vote for platforms that are aimed at sustainability for the commons. So like I mentioned, how we do that with our non-profit platform is through our member support. We're featurely built with their needs in mind, but they're also free to use by others on the platform as well. So like all those multimedia integrations that I showed you with domestic knowledge and CHOP, or custom CSS, or peer review workflows, all of that is like built for someone or like a group in mind, but then can be applied to everyone for completely free. I'll also note that PubPub has a dedicated community team, which I'm part of, that is open to challenges and making sure that knowledge is more accessible, especially with regards to these social learning environments. So if you're interested in any of this, I have a few links on the slide here, and I will thank you all so much for your attention. I know this is the last session of the summit, so I'm happy to stick around for any questions if there's any energy left, and feel free to shoot me an email otherwise.
Well, thank you very much. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to pop those into the chat or unmute yourself.
I've got a quick question. What we have different open source tools that are available to us for publishing journals, for publishing books. What communities are best served, in your opinion, by PubPub? What does PubPub do best?
That's a great question. I think right now, at least in terms of the demographics, it's a lot of books and journals. I think that might just be because those are they're fairly easy and straightforward to upload different types of documents and then link them to these different collections and organize them on a web page. So I feel like that's like our largest demographic of people, but I think something that we are moving more towards is creating more different types of workflows. So I mean, just because we think a lot about publishing, and I think that just like traditionally in academia means like books, journals, and things like that. So but I think that there's, as I kind of showed you in that one slide, there's a lot of people who are using it for their classrooms and creating these OER type resources. So I think that there's a lot of potential. I think now that people are starting to see these examples being used for these like learning and like collaborative spaces, that's like certainly something that we're seeing a lot more of in recent months and years.
That's actually the answer I thought you were going to say, that for collaborative spaces. I thought you would tell me it was best for informal scholarly communities as opposed to like a more structured journal. So it was interesting, your answer. What does it mean to your organization to be an open source tool? I know that's been something you've kind of struggled with. You've had kind of have put out some statements in the past about it, but I was just curious about, what does that mean to be open source as it refers to the current PubPub?
Yeah, so all of our code is, you can see it and fork it, and I'm not a developer, so I'm not probably going to use the right words or the best words to describe it, but it's all available on GitHub. And something I know that we're working on is creating an open API to be able to like self-host the space yourself rather than having to rely on our servers. So if you have other questions about that, I'm sure someone else on the dev team could answer that a little bit better. But the short of it is, it's like it's like available to see and to reuse on GitHub.
Okay, that's interesting. When you visit GitHub, one of the things it says, like right on the front page, is we're not well set up to contribute to our open source project. We're not well set up for you to run your own
Right.
version of our open
Right.
source project, and that's just very different from how open source projects are normally run, where the expectation is that a skilled person, not just anybody, but a skilled person would be able to run their own version of your code. And
Right.
that's what I was kind of asking about, because about a year ago, you released that statement, said we're building towards that, but we're just not quite there yet. And so that's what I was asking about. Thank you.
That's still true, but it's still something that we're working on. So it's not something that we've empty promised. It is something that we're actively working on.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Great question, Ed. Any other questions or any other ideas or concerns or things that you might like to share?
Oh, I do see there's a question in the chat. How does PubPub interact with authoring tools like Pressbooks? I don't think I've seen an example of something coming from Pressbooks directly into PubPub, but PubPub does connect to, I showed you that connection feature. So if something exists somewhere else, you can easily point to it. I'm not quite sure how Pressbooks exports their content, to be honest, but PubPub does accept most, if not all, types of documents. So if it can be exported as someone said PDF, EPUB, and HTML, all of those things can be directly imported into PubPub. PDF's a little more tricky. It would kind of look more like this when you upload it. We tend to not love the PDF because it's hard to engage with and have that reusability. That is what we find really valuable. But yeah, most other types of document you can upload into PubPub with great ease.
I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.